Hey guys, this is Joe from the NTG Dudes, and today I've taken Han into the mono red category. I want to capitalize some stuff. I want to get some excitement and some aggression. I also want a little bit of control. I know he is based off of just being aggressive and just hitting and hitting and hitting, but this ain't the most ramping of decks because it's a mono red, so there's no ramp in it. But Han is pretty strong, and I'm trying to make it so that way you have a little bit of balance, so that way you can just, if the games get off control, you can get right back in control. So, as a leader, I'm really trying to capitalize with a play unit from your hand. It costs one less, deal 2 damage to it. And then on the other side, obviously that is limited, but on the other side, it is unlimited the number of times you can trigger him as long as he's on the field. But play a unit from your hand that costs one less and deal 2 damage to it. So obviously the idea is to just hit. I have a basic red land to go with it. It's suggested to use the 25 life, but the red one doesn't really do it for me, so I'm going with the 30. But let's go with the sideboard first. I have 2 units in it, and both are the same one. Kutsu Onyu, Saboteur, that's in case there's a lot of Sentinels. You may defeat an upgrade that costs 2 or less, so it also deals with upgrades. A lot of my sideboard deals with upgrades. The 3 of I have is Power Failure. Gee whiz. Power Failure. Defeat any number of upgrades on a unit. It could be yours, could be theirs, blah, blah, blah. And I am wrong. I have a second unit. I forgot that I put that in the sideboard. Disabling Fang Fighter. You may defeat an upgrade to 3/2 for 3. Can bring it in for 2 on turn 1. But usually that's not what you want to do because you're getting rid of upgrades. So that's that. So that's most of the bar. And then the last 2 cards, I'm playing double red, so why not throw that in there in the sideboard? If I'm able to throw out a bunch of units in an aggro matchup, I can take out some of the controller stuff, which is, again, a little bit, but take out some of that stuff and I could throw in the Fang Fighters just because I want something small and fast that can hit. I want these things that can help me hit. So I think a 2 of these in the sideboard, all this stuff is good sideboard stuff. Now, that is my sideboard, my quick run through on the leader. And now let's get into the main board. Now, again, these are kind of not really in any particular order. I do have them grouped together. I have 2 red 3s. He is a rebel. You're going to find there's a couple cards in this list that I took out, mainly referring to the Fleet Lieutenant and the Wing Leader. I couldn't think for a second. Those things are taken out only because I am only throwing maybe less than half of the deck that are units are rebels. And both of those cards affect rebels. So taking those out and going with this, I affect most of my units. There is some without the rebel insignia, but most of them have the rebel insignia. So the red 3 would cover that, and that's going to be a little more pronounced and a little bit stronger than if I would do the Rebel Leader and the Fleet Lieutenant, because, again, those touch only Rebel units, and yes, that'd be good on something like this, but if this ain't in play and you don't have anything in play, you're just sitting there with a card that's a 2/1 or a 3/3 that essentially is not going to really help your deck out. So I know it sounds crazy not to put those into a Rebel based deck, but this isn't really about rebels. But the red 3 is a 3-cost space unit. I'm trying to balance it out a little bit more between space and ground, and it has raid 1, so if it attacks, it is a 3/3 instead of a 2/3, and each other friendly unit gains raid 1. So every time they attack, you get a +1/+0 on those units. The next one I got is one of the most basic rebel fighters that was a home run in the set 1, and that's the Green Squadron A-Wing. It's a 1/3, raid 2. With the red 3, then I'll make it a raid 3. So it'd be a 4/3 on attack. That's one of the most basic. This is one of my underrated cards from this set is Rokai Gunship. I'm not 100% sure how to spell it, but it is a 2/1. It's a 2 cost, so it's very easy to throw out 1 or 2 units on turn 1. But it is very simply a 2/1, and when it dies, you deal 1 damage to a unit or base. So essentially, you're doing a little bit extra. You're doing a ping damage to something, and I'm playing 3 of. The next one is Starwing Scout. You can play at turn 1, maybe get a shot or 2 in. If you have the initiative, when it is defeated, you draw 2 cards. So there's a couple other things I thought about doing card draw with, but I thought if you have the initiative and this thing can hit, you're getting 2 cards for basically this thing dying. And being a 4/1, it ain't going to take much. And if you get out turn 1, you go first, get out turn 1. They kill your unit by turn 2 or even turn 1 after you take the initiative, which most likely, give or take, but most likely you'll be able to get the initiative pretty quick if you're going first. But yeah, maybe it should be sideboarded. But I really like the fact it is a 4 power, and I tend to find if you can get this out on turn 1, about 50-60% of the time, especially if you go first, that is a 4 damage that's going to come out and hit on turn 2. Before you do anything else, that is 4 damage before it can be removed. Nice little shot. If nothing else, that 4 damage can be huge. Valiant Assault Ship. If you noticed, so far I'm showing pretty much all air units, but I am almost done with those. This is actually the last one. But the idea is to just... It's a Saboteur. And obviously, by the time he comes out, Han comes out, if you can get him out after Han comes out, I usually... 6 resources is going to be a lot of what you want. I might resource here or there. But having Saboteur on a fighter, there's a lot of people that's going to play the System Patrol Craft. You're going to play the Black Sun Sentinel. This will get around it, and not only that, but if they have more resources than you, which, you can take a turn and say, screw it, I'm not resourcing, then this unit would get a +2/+0 for this turn attack. So if it is a 3/4 and they have more units than you, that is hitting for 5, and you can get around Sentinel. That's a really, really nice shot to be able to do that on a base. Especially if you do the Starwing Scout 4/1, hit for 1, turn 2, you do this Valiant Assault Ship, and then by turn 3, you could have essentially 9 damage. So let's go to the ground. I know my angle of the camera is probably not the best, but I am doing that for a reason. I just want to get some good angles on it. I'm trying to organize my cards how I want to show them. I want to experiment with some of the double cards. So I am going to throw those in there, and we're going to see how this plays out. And just give me 1 second. Technical difficulties. Well, not technically, but... Okay. So I'm going to start off with the ground now. That was all air. For the ground, we are starting with the Reckless Gunslinger. It's a simple 2/1 for 1. If this gets out, if you have this in your hand with, say, the Rogue Squadron A-Wing, the Green Squadron A-Wing, sorry. I like saying Rogue. But anyway, the Green Squadron A-Wing and this, and you get these both out turn 1, that could be essentially 5 damage plus the 1 damage on each base as it comes into play. Plus you can smuggle it. So I know it's not that big to smuggle, but just being able to have something that you can discard for a resource and play later, I mean, it's when it comes into play, you're doing an extra damage. So technically, to me, that's a 3/1. Even if it dies on the turn it comes in, I mean, you're still getting a damage in. And yeah, you're going to hit your own base, but theoretically, you're hitting their base faster than they're hitting yours. Partisan Insurgent was one that I saw on the list. I actually got the base of this deck off a list online, but then I turned around and they didn't have a start to the second set yet because the cards weren't all spoiled and he didn't know what to do. So he made them all sideboard. So I went through and really didn't like his base that he had. But he had some pieces that were good. And my first card I used for that was Partisan Insurgent. That was on the list as a sideboard. And I really like the fact we're playing mono red, double red. So while you control another red unit, this unit would gain raid 2. So it'd be attacking for a 3/4. Simple, easy, but hey, why not? Bo-Katan I'm playing 2 of. She's a 3/3 that you can bring in turn 1. And for each player with 15 or more damage on their base, draw a card when she is defeated. Now, it would not, if things turn out the way you want, which it doesn't always happen with Han, because aggro decks, there's a lot of answers to it. But if you can get 15 damage on before she dies, which theoretically could happen, and you'll see some of the other ways that I have besides units to deal damage. And obviously, if you sideboard in the Chaos of War, that could add an extra 2 damage on each attack, too. So, I mean, that could be huge. But she is a 3/3, so she's not very big, double red. And for each player with 15 or more damage on their base, draw a card. So you could very easily get that. Sabine Wren, I'm only playing 2 of. I just want to be able to have the threat of throwing it in there. It's red. It's a really, really strong red. While there are at least 3 aspects among that one's not going to matter, so you can be attacked. But every time she attacks, you will do a damage to a defender or to the base. That's a situational. Here is the money of the deck. Fighters for Freedom. Every time you play a red card, you may deal damage to a base. You get 2 of these out. Every time you play a red card, or even 1, you're doing a ping every time you're throwing a red card out with this guy. And he's Saboteur. And you can get him out turn 1. So you can be turn 2. You can essentially play 2 or 3 and maybe even one of these as one of the 2, and you could essentially do 3 damage just from playing red cards. That's pretty strong. Now, this one I really, really like. I think he's underrated. I really haven't seen him in any decks, and I think this is the first time I really want to include him. He's not that big, so he's easy to get rid of. But if he can stay on for a turn, and they're playing any kind of control, and even to play the control, to control this guy, that could be an additional ping of 2 damage just for them to play an event. So he is a 4. He's a 5/4, so it wouldn't take much to beat him. He is a rebel, I get it. But as an additional cost for each opponent to play an event, they must deal 2 damage to their base. So let's say they want to play a Wayland to bounce him. They're going to take 2 damage just for bouncing him. They play a takedown, 2 damage. I'm only playing 2. I really thought about doing 3 or a sideboard of 1. If you guys really look at this list, let me know. Sorry, I'm not going to have the list down below, but this is what I have. K2SO, a basic stable for any red deck. For each opponent, you know, when he has overwhelm of a 4/4, so if he hits a 1/3, that 1 damage will go over. Again, that overwhelm can really come in handy, and it usually does. And when defeated, for each opponent, choose 1. Either deal 3 damage to that player's base or that player discards a card from their hand. Yeah, it's usually going to be the 3 damage to the base. Because like I said, we have different ways to do damage to the base, and we really want to do damage to the base. Poe Dameron, again, can come down on turn 4. He's a 6/6. On attack, you can discard up to 3 cards from your hand. For each card discarded this way, choose a different option. Deal 2 damage to a unit or base. So far, I mean, I have done that. I've done mostly the damage, but I have made opponents discard cards. Defeat an upgrade. That's another nice thing you can do. And then you can also make an opponent discard a card from their hand. Now, here's a couple that I haven't put in, but I will explain why the numbers are what they are. Gorilla Attack Pod. It's a grit. You're bringing in a 4/6 for 6. And it will be a 6/4 if you use Han's ability on turn 5. If a base has 15 or more damage on it, ready this unit. So basically, you bring this on with Han. It now, instead of being a 4/6, it is now a 6/4, which gives you more damage. And that could be attacking right as it comes into play, basically, on your next phase. So, say that you attack with what you got. They're using up their stuff. You use Han's ability on turn 5. You give it 2 damage, so it's a 6/4, and then they do something. Hopefully they don't remove it. And then you turn around and swing 6/4 at their base. Again, it's dependent on if they have 15 or more damage on their base, but this could really close out games. I've had it used on me. I've played on others. Now, here's another 6/1. And the reason why I'm only playing one of this one, I think this one is probably one of the best cards in the whole set. And a lot of people have said the same thing. And if you really think about it, it's going to be easy to figure out. But the only reason why I'm playing one is because I only own one. Otherwise, I'd probably be playing 3 of and get rid of the Gorilla Attack Pad, whatever. But Overwhelm. And again, a reason why you will have less resources is because this guy will remove it as he comes into play. You may defeat a friendly resource, and if you do, deal 5 damage to a ground unit. That could absolutely wreck a deck. Now, when you get later in the game, especially with Han being an aggro, you're seeing I have a good balance of low cost, medium cost, high cost. But the whole idea is the fact that you're going to be throwing out stuff. They're going to be throwing stuff. And then you play Wrecker, get rid of a resource, and you essentially can get rid of most anything on the ground. Because most likely it's going to have some damage on it, even if, you play something with ambush, it's going to have damage. You play something with red with ambush, or you play something, virtually anything, there's going to be damage on it. Or let's say you have a Chilson that's a 6/6 because he's Sentinel, but he was hit already because he's Sentinel. And you had to attack in, so you let something go. You bring him in, Wrecker in, you do the 1 damage, or you get rid of the resource, and as long as there's 1 damage already on Chilson, if he has 6 on him, which sometimes there's only 5, which in that case, you don't have to swing with anything. You can use Wrecker to get rid of him, get rid of the resource, do the 5 damage, and then you can just swing in with everything because they don't have Sentinel. So he is a Wrecker, and I wish I had more, but I only have 1, and that's why I said I really want to discuss it. Mace Windu, 5/7 for 7. Ambush, and when this unit defeats a unit, attacks and defeats a unit, you can ready him. So I've actually brought him in, and I've had a game where they were playing, I'm trying to think what all they had. I think they had a Death Star Stormtrooper, so I swung him in, hit it for 3. The Stormtrooper died. He flipped, or he readied himself after that. They did something else. I swung in and hit 1/3, or 1/4, I think it was, because I think it was the regional governor. Killed that, readied him again. He only had 4 damage on him. And then they had like a Fader or a Maul or something with 3 damage left on it. And I swung in with him again, killed it. He died, but right there's a 3 for 1 right there. 1 shot. Really great play. He's just fun to play. And now the other card, it might stay in, it might go out. Again, it's mainly because I only have a 1 of. I'm not playing acceleration, so there might be a high chance that it gets put into the resource. And I think by now you guys, because of the way I'm talking, you guys can probably figure out what it is. Krayt Dragon. 10/10 for 9, overwhelms, so I can kill off something and do the rest of the damage to the base. I can play it turn 8, which I've had games where Han does go to turn 8. And you may deal, every time they play a card, doesn't matter what it is, you can do damage equal to the amount of, the cost of the card to the base or ground unit they control. So that is my air and my ground units. And the Krayt Dragon might not stay in, I don't know. But just for, and again, the events are kind of my own side. So we're going to see how it goes. First one is Precision Fire. Attack with a unit and gain Saboteur for this attack. If it's a trooper, it also gets +2/+0. So you've noticed I have a couple Saboteurs to get around Sentinels. And this is another card that will give one of my stuff Sentinel or Saboteur to get around it. Now, I've got, most of these are going to be 2 ofs. I've got Detention Block Rescue. If they capture one of my cards, I can deal 3 damage to a unit. And if they have the card captured, then I deal 6 damage instead. So if they do it to a commander or to a leader, then I could essentially kill the leader with one shot. Keep fighting. Again, 2 of. Just ready a unit that's 3 or less power. I have a lot of units that's that way. Here's a little bit of aggression, of control. Open fire, I'm playing a 3 of. Deal 4 damage to a unit. I only have 1 aggression to play, so I put it in there. Choose 2 in any order. It's a 4 cost, but we're playing double red. Choose 2 in any order. Draw a card. Defeat up to 2 upgrades. I figured that's another upgrade removal. Ready a unit with 3 or less power, or deal 4 damage to a unit. So you have a lot of different options. I really think for this deck that'll work well. And then finally, my last event, Daring Raid. Deal 2 damage to a unit or base. This deck is really based on the fact that Han will be doing a lot of impertinent damage. So you're going to do a whole lot of damage where you're going to be peeing here and there. Saul Guerrero, you play an event, the opponent plays an event, they're going to take 2 damage. Fighters for Freedom, you play any red cards, you're automatically going to be giving 1 damage. The Reckless Gunslinger, doing the damage. The Ryokai Gunship, if it dies, you're doing a damage. So, K2SO, you're doing damage. Daring Raid, most likely you're probably going to do damage to the base. Doesn't always happen, but that's kind of what we're looking at. So, just saying all of that, you're seeing how much impertinent damage we are doing to the base, and that's what we're looking at. Because that little bit of damage, yeah, it might be only 5 damage, 4 damage in a game, but that could be difference between life and death, and that's why he's kind of aggro. You're playing out a lot of units, you have a lot of control, and hopefully, if the deck goes exactly the way we want it to, we have a winner. So anyway, that is my decks. Or that is my Han deck. I'm making some other decks. We're going to see how they go. And, yeah. We're going to talk to you later. You guys take care and just be blessed.